Hi, my name is Frank Zendejas. I'm a strategic intervention coach and host of SI Insights, a forum where I share ideas, techniques, and strategies to help you discover, define, declare, and drive towards your compelling future. Welcome to today's episode. Today I want to share on the topic of grief and loss, specifically presenting a perspective of grief and loss, unresolved grief and incomplete emotional relationships, completion, and misinformation on dealing with grief and loss. What happens when we encounter grief or loss? How do we deal with it? From the time we are born, we are taught and encouraged to acquire skills, talents, education, relationships, status, career, possessions, acceptance, approval, happiness, love. The list is long. How do we deal when we lose something we've acquired? We are not taught how to navigate this type of event in a constructive manner, both for oneself and for people around us. As a result, we may limp along with immediate and ongoing impacts, with a sense of permanent or reoccurring shadow that casts itself over what is available to us as a bright, vibrant, and energized version of ourselves, pushing out precious energy that otherwise could be used towards embracing, stepping into, and living from a place of power, from your highest self. Examine this for yourself. How have you dealt with grief or loss, both of which can lead to unresolved grief and being left feeling emotionally incomplete, absent of feeling a sense of completeness? I will share on this topic over the next few episodes. Firstly, I will step through a few definitions and some grief misinformation that I learned as a grief recovery method specialist. So, what is grief and loss? Well, grief is the normal and natural emotional reaction to loss or a significant change in pattern. It's the feeling of wishing things would have ended different or better. A different definition is grief is the feeling of reaching out for someone who's always been there, only to discover when you need him or her one more time, she's no longer there. This is clearly a deep emotional expression of a death of a spouse or a parent. Equally emotional is the following. Grief is the feeling of reaching out for someone who has never been there before for you, only to discover when you need them one more time, they still aren't there. The implication here is that the person has not died, but is emotionally or otherwise unavailable to you, and they've always been. The connection here is around abandonment, lack of love, affection, support, encouragement, many others. Here's another one. Grief is the feeling of reaching out for someone who had been there for you at one time, only to discover you can't go to them for help or comfort anymore. This can be a divorce, perhaps a breakup, or a friendship where boundaries have shifted. What is universal about grief is that it is unique and individual. Everyone grieves in their own way and at their own pace. Each person and relationship is different, which means that how we deal with each loss will be different as well. Unfortunately, many people are not aware that each of us respond differently to each loss, and there's often the perception that others did not care as much as we did. This is one of the reasons some families seem to fall apart after a loss. A family loses the matriarch, and the way in which the siblings grieve varies just as much as the individuality of their respective relationship to the parent. Without this understanding, comparison may kick in and cultivate other forms of anguish. versus working towards a grief loss understanding and engaging with compassion, acceptance, and support. So what is unresolved grief? Unresolved grief is almost always the things we wish we'd said or done differently or better. For example, I wish I told my dad I loved him before it was too late. Or, I wish I'd visited Grandma before she died so I could tell her what she meant to me. It's also about unrealized hopes, dreams, and expectations we had for a relationship. In negative relationships, the death or divorce robs us of the possibility of repair, thereby preventing the relationship from becoming positive. Lastly, unresolved grief is about undelivered communications of an emotional nature. See, unresolved grief leads to being left emotionally incomplete. It's cumulative and cumulative negative. And there is opportunity for completeness. Completeness is the result of having delivered those emotional communications that were either never made, or we felt were never heard, or that need to be said again. It grants the ability to say goodbye to any pain, which may be limiting us from fond memories, and say goodbye to any unmet hopes, dreams, and expectations about the future. Where are we in our understanding on dealing with grief or loss? What have we been taught? What's some of the most common misinformation? Often these are intellectualized comments delivered in response to a loss. For example, time heals. Time does not heal. Action within time does. If there are no steps taken to achieve completeness, to actively resolve incomplete grief, then the griever may spend their entire life in the space and hope waiting for time to heal. Grieve alone. Give him some time, or perhaps she just needs a few minutes alone in the other room. As children, we learn that this means that sad feelings should be hidden or experienced alone. This is often supported by the words of the poet Ella Wheeler Wilcox that reads, "Laugh, and the world laughs with you. Weep, and you weep alone. We grieve in isolation, alone." Be strong. Usually the griever is asked to be strong for others. Yet there are no specific instructions on how to do that, and it becomes confusing because it is undoable. It's one of those expressions that sounds really good, but has no real value. What tends to come from this is a form of emotional shutdown and attachment. You're left alone on what seems like an island. Again, alone. Don't feel bad. This is usually followed by an intellectually true statement, but it's not helpful at all to the griever. The griever is often left feeling confused and frustrated, feelings that lead to emotional isolation. Don't feel bad. His suffering is over. These two statements have no supportive correlation towards each other. A person who is no longer suffering has no bearing on how you should not feel. Your emotions still exist. Replace the loss. This is common with a pet loss or the end of a romantic relationship. This may sound like, "We'll get you a new dog on Monday," or "There are plenty of fish in the sea," or "You just have to get out there and date again." More than likely, there has been no action taken to grieve over the loss of the pet or relationship, just an attempt to not feel the emotions attached to the loss. Keep busy. If I just keep busy, then I won't have time to think about the loss. Some people spend their entire lives with this mentality and never get a chance to grieve and complete what was unfinished with a particular loss. This is just avoidance. Here are some actions. Did the grief and loss definitions resonate for you? In understanding them, did some ring true for you? What events did you think about that tested true? What about unresolved grief and being emotionally incomplete? Are there some events in your life where you thought, I wish I would have said this or that, perhaps done this or that, or holding on to some unmet hopes, dreams, or expectations, perhaps foregoing some hopes, dreams, and expectations that you once held true? What misinformation have you heard about grief? Can you look back in your life and recall hearing intellectualized comments that support grieve alone, don't be sad, replace the loss, be strong, perhaps keep busy, time heals? Perhaps there are some others that you've heard or have experienced. What are they? What key decisions did you make as a result of hearing or experiencing that misinformation? Think about it. Take some time to examine these questions for your life. We'll get to pick up on this shortly on the next episode. Perhaps this or prior episodes have resonated with you and you have some questions or are interested in working with me. If so, my practice is called Zendejas Strategic Intervention, and you can visit my website at www.zsicoach.com. There you'll find a brief about me, the library of SI Insight videos, and a link to ask me questions or to schedule a free clarity session. Thank you for watching this episode of SI Insights.